This is BBC News. I'm Martine Croxall. The headlines at midday. Dame Tessa Jowell has died at the age of 70. The former Labour cabinet minister was diagnosed with a brain tumour last May. She recently spoke in the House of Lords while campaigning for better cancer treatment.
Gives a life meaning is not only how it is lived, but how it draws to a close. I hope that this debate will give hope to other cancer patients like me.
Tributes have been paid to Dame Tessa, who was a significant figure in the last Labour government. Former Prime Minister Tony remembered by many for her political talent, as well as her support and friendship.
She did everything with the same passion, determination, verve, ability and charm. So she was a unique politician, but she was a really dear friend.
One person's been killed and 4 others wounded in a knife attack in Paris. Authorities are treating it as a terror incident. France's Prime Minister says the country will stand firm against attacks.
La France est déterminée.
France is absolutely determined not to yield in any way to the threats issued by attackers. Our response will be firm and clear.
Indonesian police say a mother and father and their children carried out the 3 church bombings that killed at least 11 people. Also in the next hour, Israel lifts the trophy at this year's Eurovision Song Contest. Singer Netta takes top points with her song Toy, inspired by the Me Too movement, but a stage invader during the UK's performance causes drama at the Lisbon event. It's official. A picture of the Queen's formal consent for Prince Harry's marriage to Meghan Markle has been released ahead of the ceremony next Saturday. And at 12:30, Click looks at an exhibition of designs that could shape the way we live our lives in the future. That's in 30 minutes. Good afternoon and welcome to BBC News. The former Labour cabinet minister Tessa Jowell has died at the age of 70. She'd been diagnosed with brain cancer in May 2017. Dame Tessa was a leading figure in the government of Tony Blair, serving as Minister for Culture and Sport. She was also a driving force behind London's successful bid to host the Olympics in 2012. The Prime Minister has paid tribute to Tessa Jowell. Over a photograph of the 2 of them together, she said, "The dignity and courage with which Dame Tessa Jowell confronted her illness was humbling and it was inspirational. My sympathies to her loving family. Dame Tessa's campaigning on brain cancer research is a lasting tribute to a lifetime of public service." Well, the Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn has also paid tribute. Devastating to hear the news of Tessa Jowell's death. From councillor to cabinet minister, her achievements were huge, including helping to bring the Olympics to London. Her strength in raising awareness of her illness and fighting for better treatment for others inspired us all. Our correspondent Leila Nathu looks back on her career.
At the Games of the 30th Olympiad in 2012 are awarded to the City of London.
The words they wanted to hear. London had won the contest to host the 2012 Olympics, and it was Tessa Jowell who championed the bid from the start.
I am Tessa Jowell, Olympic Minister.
She went on to oversee preparations for the Games.
We can see the roof of the aquatics.
And laid the foundations for the capital's greatest sporting event.
Tessa Jane Helen Douglas Jowell.
Tessa Jowell was first elected to Parliament in 1992 in the South London seat of Dulwich, after spending time as a social worker and counsellor. She was then one of just 60 female MPs in the Commons. A new Labour stalwart, Tessa Jowell was a popular figure in all circles, but was one of Tony Blair's strongest supporters. After spells as Public Health and then Education Minister, she joined the Cabinet in 2001 as Culture Secretary, overseeing the relaxation of gambling and licensing laws and persuading her colleagues to back the Olympic pitch.
You do deny that you took a bribe for the Smithers game?
Absolutely.
She married the lawyer David Mills, but they separated in 2006 after controversy over his business dealings. She was cleared of any breach of the ministerial code, and they later reconciled. Tessa Jowell continued to serve on Labour's front bench under Gordon Brown and after the party lost power in 2010. She left the Commons in 2015 and stood to be Labour's candidate for London Mayor, though she lost out to Sadiq Khan. Not long after entering the House of Lords, Lady Jowell revealed she'd been diagnosed with a brain tumour. She later gave a moving speech to peers about her condition.
In the end, what gives a life meaning is not only how it is lived, but how it draws to a close. I hope that this debate will give hope to other cancer patients like me, so that we can live well together with cancer, not just dying of it. All of us for longer. Thank you.
Leila Matthew reporting. Well, the former Prime Minister Tony Blair has been speaking about his memories of Dame Tessa and the legacy she leaves behind.
Tessa was a unique politician in my experience. She never held one of the really big government departments, the Treasury or Foreign Office, but her impact on politics was enormous. Everything she touched, she turned to gold in some way, whether it was advancing equal pay for women, starting Sure Start, which is an immense program for children in our country, or of course bringing the Olympics to Britain. And she did everything with the same passion, determination, verve, ability and charm. So she was a unique politician, but she was a really dear friend. And everybody who was a friend of hers knew that they could rely on her, whatever their circumstances, whatever happened. She was always going to be there and be there for them.
And she was a very close friend of yours. How did that friendship develop? I mean, I read she once said that she would throw herself under a bus for you.
Well, she was incredibly loyal. But that didn't mean to say that she wouldn't be very frank and honest with me if she disagreed. So she was one of those people, though, whose integrity you could trust completely. So she was never going to be playing games. She was always absolutely straight with you. But when it came down to it, and you know, there were many times when I was under pressure, obviously, as Prime Minister, she was always there for me and would support me and work for me and stand up for me, even when it was difficult and unpopular to do so. And that was, I think, why, you know, quite apart from all her achievements, one of the reasons why she evoked such affection in people was that you knew she wasn't a fair weather friend. I mean, whatever the weather, she was there and always there.
And times of pressure, she was the one who really brought the Olympics to London, and she really had to get you and other colleagues on board for that.
When Tessa first suggested that we bid for the Olympics, there was a lot of opposition inside government. I was advised we didn't really have a chance of winning the bid. So I remember sitting in the garden in Downing Street one morning when she asked to see me, and she just looked at me very directly when I was saying to her, well, look, Tessa, I'm not really sure, is this really a good idea? And she just said to me, this is a country that should always have the highest ambition. She said, I can't guarantee you that we will win this bid, but I can guarantee you that we do have a chance, and I will give it everything I've got. And this is something that you as Prime Minister should support for the country. And she literally convinced me in that conversation. So I went back afterwards and said, okay, we're going to go with this, and you know, the rest is history. And she then didn't simply work to make the bid successful, which it was, but then worked to make the Olympics successful in 2012.
And do you remember how she felt about that? Because she was in the shadow cabinet by the time the Olympics actually happened. But was she still proud to see it happening before her eyes?
I think one of the things about Tessa was that for her the most important thing was that the Olympics happened, and that Britain was the host of a great Olympic Games, which it was. So for her, you know, the fact she was no longer in government didn't matter to her, but she was still very closely involved in all the implementation. And you know, she was somebody who did an immense amount behind the scenes. So when I visited the Olympics with her, you know, she was talking to the volunteers and to the organisers. She wasn't just mixing with the high-profile athletes. she was with all the people that were helping to make the spirit of the game special, not just the mechanics of it good. So that was very typical of her. And any time she was ever asked to do anything that involved people, she stood out, because it's a funny thing in politics, but you can sometimes have politicians that love the people, in inverted commas, but don't actually particularly like people. You know what I mean? But Tessa was someone who adored mixing with people, and she would spend hours and hours and hours with people, and she enjoyed it, and they enjoyed being with her.
You say people meant a lot to her. Perhaps her other greatest legacy is going to be what she did for health, both before her illness and afterwards. What memories do you have of the influence she had in that area?
In the area of health, before we got into government and after we got into government, she was really, I think, the first senior politician that said that the idea of public health, in other words, how you improve the nation's general health and prevent illness, was as important as how you cured illness. So she really made that her thing within first the opposition and then government. And then, of course, in the last months of her life, she became involved in this big global cancer initiative. And it was absolutely typical of Tessa. I mean, she literally spent all the hours she was able, at the same time as obviously suffering her own illness, to make sure that this initiative got support from our government, from other governments. And I can tell you from the people in that global initiative who were involved with her, they were absolutely amazed by her commitment and her endeavour and her selflessness, because she knew she was dying, and yet she was prepared to give everything she had in order to help people in the future.
She famously said that what gives life meaning is not only how it's lived, but how it draws to a close. Now it has ended. What do you think her legacy will be, and her memory among people?
I think her legacy is going to be obviously the things she achieved in public health, Sure Start for Children, bringing the Olympics to Britain, making it a success, what she did for cancer in those last months of her life. I mean, all of this will be big achievements. But I think the other legacy, I think and hope, will be for all the cynicism around politics, this is someone who it's really hard to be cynical about. I mean, she was a committed public servant, and if anyone ever wants to know what politics can achieve, they can look at her life and how she lived it, and how she ended it as a testimony to all that's best in politics.
And finally, how will you remember her as a friend?
For me, she was one of my closest and dearest friends. Politics is not a very easy environment in which friendships can thrive and survive. But she was my friend throughout my time in politics, in opposition, in government, after I left office, and she was always the same. She was always true and loyal and decent and wise.
Former Prime Minister Tony Blair. Well, tributes for Dame Tessa Jowell continue to be shared on social media. Labour MP Emily Thornberry tweeted, "Such sad news about Tessa Jowell. She was one of our greatest women parliamentarians and a true, loyal, supportive sister." Conservative MP Anna Soubry tweeted, "Dame Tessa leaves a remarkable legacy. Right to the end she campaigned in the interests of other people." Nicky Morgan has said, "Very sorry to hear about the death of Tessa Jowell. She was a brave and dedicated campaigner to the very end of her life and an inspiration to aspiring female MPs on all sides of the political debate." Her daughter-in-law, Ella Woodward, tweeted, "I've never seen love like I have since becoming part of their family. Thank you for teaching us all so much about love, kindness, optimism and courage. The bravery you showed this past year was like nothing I have ever seen." Let's speak now to the 11-time Paralympic champion and House of Lords peer, Baroness Gray Thompson. Tanya Gray Thompson, thank you very much for joining us on what must be an immensely difficult day for you. Share some memories of Tessa Jowell with us, if you would.
What everyone said is true. She had this sort of spark and sort of like shine in her eyes. She was sort of very quietly determined, And, you know, I remember talking to her very early on when she said that she wanted to win the right to host the Olympic and Paralympic Games. And there were so many people who just said, it's not going to happen, it's not our turn, it's Paris's turn. You know, we forget that we tried with Manchester and Birmingham. And Tessa just brought this amazing approach to it. You know, there were so many challenges along the way, and I never saw her behave anything than with huge dignity, respect. But you just see that steely determination in her eye. And if somebody said, no, it's not our turn, you just see her nod and just go, And she had this amazing ability to pull people together. And her passion for the Paralympics as well. You know, she always talked about the Olympics and Paralympics. It wasn't an afterthought. She really drove home the point that the two games had to be together. And she kept that, you know, message going very strong, even when she was no longer in government.
But she was still concerned about the legacy that 2012 had.
And she always cared passionately about sport. And, you know, even in the last few months, we sat on the Tennis Foundation together. And when she found out that Alfie Hewitt had got to world #1, immediately, you know, an email went round to say, you know, congratulations, you know, and that kind of passion and pride that she felt for British sport. And I hope that in her time that, you know, she did recognise how much people thought of what she did. It's easy to sort of think now, you know, we had the games and they were incredible, that it was just this really simple ride. But it wasn't, and without her, we never would have had the chance to have those incredible games on home soil. And for the Paralympics, just set it on a completely different level from anything that we'd ever experienced. And it's down to her that happened.
You sit in the House of Lords now. You know how tribal it can become at times. So how did she navigate that and bring people together?
She just had this incredible way with her. I mean, just something that we can all learn from in terms of how she spoke to anybody and everybody. She would sit and listen. She wouldn't sort of jump in, you know, with a strong view straight away, but she would let it be known what she felt about things. And she was incredibly collaborative. And I think I was in the chamber for her last speech, and I've never seen anything like it. I mean, everybody who was there said exactly the same thing. And, you know, there were people who weren't in the country at the time, who flew in to make sure they were there to support her. We didn't know at the time that was going to be her final speech. But, you know, the House of Lords is quite quiet. There's never a huge amount of emotion shown there, but every single speaker from all sides of the chamber talked about how much she meant. And that round of applause at the end, nobody can ever remember anything like that ever happening, but it was just the warmth and the respect with which she was held. And people were still there an hour plus later. I mean, no, it's incredibly difficult for her to be there and to have made that speech. But people just wanted to say how much she meant to them. So I'm glad that we had the opportunity to say to her at that point, you know, what an incredible person she was.
What do you hope other parliamentarians will carry forward, having worked with her and seen that speech in particular?
Well, firstly, you know, in terms of she was talking about cancer care, there was huge amount of support for her work, and I do believe that people will carry that on from all sides of the chamber. The government minister, you know, spoke very powerfully about what she'd said and listened very carefully. So I think her legacy in that term will keep going. I think she can teach us all something about how to be in the chamber, how to be outside the chamber, how we probably all need to be more collaborative in terms of what we do. And for me personally, she just shows that you should fight for what you believe in, you know, whether it's public health or what she did for women or female parliamentarians, let alone what she did for the Olympic and Paralympic Games. She was just a breed apart, and, you know, she will be hugely missed just because she always had time for everybody. It didn't matter who you were. If you wanted to speak to her, she had time for you.
Tanni Grey-Thompson, thank you very much for talking to us. Dame Tessa Jowell, who's died at the age of 70. The headlines on BBC News. And that is our top story this afternoon. Dame Tessa Jowell has died at the age of 70, her family have confirmed. She was diagnosed with brain cancer last May. Tributes have been paid to the former Labour Cabinet Minister. She played a major role in bringing the 2012 Olympics to London and recently campaigned for better cancer treatment. Police are investigating a suspected terror attack in Paris. One person was killed and 4 others were wounded. Sport now, full roundup from the BBC Sports Centre with Catherine. Hello.
Hi Martine, good morning. The Premier League
season will not give in to the enemies of freedom after a man armed with a knife killed 1 person and injured 4 others in Paris last night. So-called Islamic State said they carried out the attack, which happened on a busy street near to the city's main opera house. The man was shot dead by police. Janie Mitchell reports.
In a popular part of Paris. Instead, a victim lies stabbed in the street. Eyewitnesses reported scenes of panic as the attacker lashed out with a blade. Investigators say he shouted Allahu Akbar, Arabic for God is great. Police flooded the area near the Opera House, and witnesses say officers first tried to taser the suspect and then fired 2 shots.
The police arrived quickly. Everyone arrived quickly. We didn't know what was going on. We were quickly moved inside the bar. I went outside and I saw a man lying on the floor.
President Macron said his thoughts were with the victims and their loved ones. He saluted the courage of the police officers who, in his words, neutralized the terrorist. The city's mayor said that all Parisians stood by the victim's side. The incident is being treated as terrorism. Judicial sources have told the French media that the attacker was born in 1997 in the southern Russian Republic of Chechnya. The source said his parents are being questioned. The Islamic State group has claimed responsibility, saying it was targeting countries of the coalition which fought against it in the Middle East.
La France est déterminée.
France is absolutely determined not to yield in any way to the threats issued by attackers. Our response will be firm and clear.
Faire peser sur elle.
Over the past 3 years, a string of jihadist attacks across France has claimed the lives of almost 250 people. As the investigation continues, the police will remain on high alert. Janie Mitchell, BBC News.
Police in Indonesia say suicide bombers, all members of one family, have attacked 3 churches in the country's 2nd largest city of Surabaya. At least 11 people have been killed and dozens more injured. It's believed the bomb blast took place within 10 minutes of each other. This is mobile phone footage that was taken shortly after one of the explosions. Police say a mother and 2 children set off explosions at one church, while the father and 3 sons targeted the other churches. The Islamic State group has claimed that it carried out the attack. Votes are being counted in Iraq after the first general election since the government declared victory over the so-called Islamic State group. But the country's electoral commission is reporting a low turnout of less than 45%. It was a night filled with drama at the Eurovision final in Lisbon after a man invaded the stage during the UK's performance. He grabbed the microphone from Suri before being dragged off and arrested. But the show belonged to Israel's Netta, who won with her song Toy, referred to by most viewers as the chicken song. She fought off competition from Cyprus and was clearly delighted when she won.
I'm so happy! Thank you so much for choosing different. Thank you so much for accepting differences between us. Thank you for celebrating diversity. Thank you. I love my country. Next time at Jerusalem.
Netta. A picture of the Queen's official consent for Prince Harry's marriage to Meghan Markle has been released. The former record is handwritten by one of the Crown Office's own artists and signed Elizabeth R. by the Queen. It'll be presented to the couple after their wedding next weekend. Let's take a look at the weather forecast with Stav.
Hello there. Yesterday was a bit disappointing across the eastern side of the country. Outbreaks of rain led to a pretty soggy afternoon and evening. Today that rain which we had through the overnight is clearing away from northern areas, and we should see plenty of sunshine moving in its place. So a better day across the southeast, eastern parts of England, a bit of low cloud and mist and murk. The wet weather across Scotland will become confined to the northern Isles this afternoon, and then for much of the country, as you can see, a lovely afternoon with lots of sunshine, temperatures of 16 to 18 Celsius. Now overnight that rain becomes confined to Shetland for a while, and then it eventually clears away. But then we see this line of cloud, this weather front returning back to the east coast. It could bring just a few showers to the extreme, the southeast. Bit of cloud across western Northern Ireland, but elsewhere it's a clear and a cool night. But for Monday, high pressure's building in. It's looking pretty good for most of the country. This weather front bringing just more cloud, a few showers across the east and the southeast. Bit of cloud as well across the west, but elsewhere warm and sunny. Top temperatures of 20 degrees.
This is BBC News, our latest headlines. Dame Tessa Jowell has died at the age of 70. She was diagnosed with a brain tumour in May last year. Dame Tessa was first elected as an MP in 1992 and went on to serve as Culture Secretary for Labour. She played a major role in the 2012 London Olympics. Former Prime Minister Tony Blair and Labour MP Harriet Harman are among those who've paid tribute today.
She did everything with the same passion, determination, verve, ability and charm. So she was a unique politician, but she was a really dear friend.
She did her politics in a very different style by befriending people. So she befriended the powerless because she wanted to support them, and she befriended the powerful because she wanted them to support the powerless.
One person has been killed and 4 wounded in a suspected terror attack in Paris. The suspect, who was carrying a knife, was shot dead by police. Indonesian police say a mother and father and their children carried out the 3 church bombings that killed at least 11 people. Israel have won the Eurovision Song Contest. Singer Netta lifted the trophy at last night's final in Lisbon. Now BBC News, click.